Hey, hello and welcome. This is Summer Piha from the Conscious.Classroom Certification Model. Check us out at cccmodel.com. You're listening to Let's Talk ECE, the place on the internet where we talk tips, tricks, and perspective shifts related to all things early childhood. Join Summer and Rachel in their mindset shifting discussions on common topics in the early childhood world. You'll hear real stories from their time working together as an owner-director pair and how they learn to see things from each other's perspectives over the years, so you can learn how to openly discuss these viewpoints and find common ground within your leadership team. Hello and welcome back to Let's Talk ECE. I'm Summer.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we're going to talk about repetition. So my dear friend and mentor has a saying, repetition is the mother of all mastery. And the first time I heard it, I kind of glossed over it and didn't really hear it. And as we continued our work together, this phrase became a huge part of my life. To really master something, and this can be anything, you must practice over and over and over.
And I'm really excited to talk about this today. And everybody knows I'm a little bit nerdy. So before we jump into some of those tools, I'm going to talk about the science of repetition, because it is a science. Our brain is a big chunk of meat with some electricity going through it, right? So it would absolutely overload if it was remembering everything we saw and heard, every license plate we saw, every story someone told us, every name of a person that we met, anything. And that is exactly why repetition is so important. Repetition is how our brain starts to decide what is important and what is not important. When we repeat something over and over or are exposed to it over and over, we literally are rewiring our brain, right? Repetition strengthens these neural pathways and allow us to create and access. That's the key, is to be able to access those memories. And I want to give a little bit of caveat here. And, we talked about this a little earlier, but when we're talking about like neurodivergent folks, and this is 20% of our staff likely, might need some additional repetition. And specifically autistic folks, because they don't have as much neural pruning, which is when we grow up, we have all of these neural pathways, and then some of them strengthen and a lot die off as we get older. And in autistic people, they don't, they stick around. So we just have a whole lot of the pathways happening all of the time. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago, like 3 weeks ago, that I found out that when people say they make a habit, that meant something that could happen automatically. My understanding of a habit was, yes, you do it, but it takes that conscious effort. So understanding that sometimes we have to repeat a couple more times because someone might have more neural pathways. It might take longer to build those neural pathways, and that is okay. That repetition is so important to develop those tools, right?
Well, this brings up a good point with staff, right? So we get asked this question over and over again from owners and directors. I don't want to have to repeat myself over and over again. How do I stop repeating myself to the staff?
All the time.
Right? And I get that. I get that, we're busy. We want to say things once and move on with our life. But I want you to think about a general rule of marketing. And this is one where it's like you have to hit the same people 7 to 10 times in different ways before they will even think about your brand. And I'm not talking like pick up the phone and make an appointment to come see you or walk in and purchase anything, but to even think or recognize your brand. Okay, now shift that same concept to communicating with your team. The key to stop repeating yourself with your team is to repeat yourself more. I know that's not what you wanted me to say, but it's what's going to stop you from being constantly frustrated that your expectations aren't being met and feeling as though you're not being heard. Okay, the fact is that people don't hear and internalize something until they've had it communicated to them 7 times. 7. So instead of repeating yourself when you're disappointed, right? Because that's a feeling a lot of us feel. I would walk in and see something I said, and I'm like, how come this isn't being done? I told you this. And I would have this heavy feeling of disappointment, right? So instead of repeating yourself when you're disappointed, make that repetition a habit. Okay. So when you're sharing new information or expectations, plan out when and how you're going to communicate it.
Yeah, I think that's so, so important. And I love that you said to make sure that you're not disappointed,
Yeah.
right? So things that I used to do as a director to make sure is I would put policies in place, or if there were changes, I would do a large group communication about the change at a staff meeting. I would do a written communication sent out to the staff. So this is just one single change, right? Then I would send like a meme or something motivational, which is that visual communication. People recognize pictures. I'd bring it up during my monthly one-on-ones. I'd address it in the moment when I see it happening, which is either identifying it and saying, oh my gosh, I see that you're doing whatever this new thing is. Or, hey, remember we just talked about this. Here's just a reminder. Send out written communications. I've seen people adhere to it with a big thank you, and then follow up at the next staff meeting. So those are 7 points of communication that I've hit with my staff. And then I'm not disappointed because I knew it was going to take that repetition over that period of time. Right.
Amazing. Well, Rachel, I think about that parent that always shows up on school closure days.
Always.
There's
one.
always one. And we started shifting, much like you just ran through, right? Where we'd send out the email, then we'd do it in the app, and then we'd put up notifications on the door. Yep. And then we went even to the extreme of sending a like half sheet or quarter sheet home with every child. Like, hey, remember school's closed Friday for teacher in service, right? Yeah. And you're still probably always going to have that one because there just is that one. But to know that the majority of the people understood the concept, it wasn't wasted effort to me.
It wasn't wasted effort. And to know too, like, if you can start identifying those people, who those people are, sometimes I know that when I had that parent, it was usually the same one. And so the day before pickup or a couple days before, like, oh, and just a reminder, we're closed tomorrow. Yeah. Letting that happen. And I think it's so important. And with all of this, I think another key there is remembering to just organize that repetition ahead of time. Really think it through, right? And
well, I loved how you went through and you were like, okay, I got to think about maybe all of our senses, or think about like, okay, well, I'll just mass send it out, and then I'll do a written communication, I'll do a visual communication, right? Because people learn differently, and different things attract their attention. And so I love that in terms of organized repetition. So if you come up with, how do you want to do this? Right? Just, okay, email, app, note on the door, half sheet home, quarter sheet home, whatever. It doesn't take that much effort, and it's organized. It allows us to be proactive and not reactive.
Yeah. And even thinking about a bigger scale, like that example that I used was going through a new policy or procedure, right? But sometimes we need to repeat our existing policies, procedures, expectations, licensing expectations.
Sometimes, all the time.
All the time, forever and ever and ever. Yeah, but it's really important to really think about that. And so I know when I was a director, how I had my staff meetings set up included 3 components, and they were something about child development, yes, something about licensing, and one of our school policies. And I would usually address them like, you start seeing these patterns, right? I'm always going to talk about dress code at our May staff meeting, the beginning of May, because it's about to get warm. And so I want to just remind people of what it is and that I'm not going to be disappointed.
Yes.
Right. Having just putting in those key reminders throughout the year. If you have, like in Minnesota, it's the Rule 3 book, and so it's all of the licensing things. I just go through there, or I would use that online where you can see all the violations. And I would just see what other people are getting citations for.
Yes.
And then be like, okay, let's retrain on that because there's a commonality here. But just really being proactive in throughout the year, repeating these specific areas, I think is so beneficial. And it's really important to talk about things just over longer periods of time too, right? Like earlier I was talking about the brain and the science of it, and it is so much more beneficial to repeat something 20 times over 20 days than repeating something 20 times in one day.
Right.
We need that gap to really retain it.
Right. So I think in general, just being more organized will help you stop repeating yourself. What do you think about that? Is
I
that
think so.
kind of what I'm summing up or what I'm
more-
hearing?
Yeah, being more organized and just being more conscious, like being that proactive,
I
being
love that.
conscious about what you are training on and understanding, are you training on it because you want to get ahead of it, or are you training on it because there's already an issue?
Oh, Rach, I heard this quote by Walter Barbie the other day, and it said, if you've told a child 1,000 times and he still does not understand, then it's not the child who's the slow learner.
There it is. I love that.
Communication is such powerful stuff. And as leaders in the early childhood industry, we're always learning and we're always growing.
Yeah.
So I hope this discussion we had today really inspires you to think about your communication, think about how often you're repeating things, and what that looks like in your program. We would love to hear what you're implementing. So leave us a comment, like, subscribe, and join us next time for Let's Talk ECE.